Hi class, welcome to our second day on 9-2. The first day was multiplying rational expressions, now we're dividing rational expressions. So it's kind of like dividing two fractions. What happens when we divide two fractions? Such as 3/10 divided by 6/5. Bringing you back to elementary school, here's what you did. You said that dividing is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So you took 3/10 and you multiplied it by the reciprocal of the second one. So the second fraction you flip upside down. So the numerator becomes the denominator and the denominator becomes the numerator. So now we're multiplying by the reciprocal, and now we can cross reduce, do all our good stuff that we did yesterday. So this becomes a 1 and a 2. Here this reduces to 1/2, and we get 1 times 1, which is 1 in the numerator, and 2 times 2, which is 4 in the denominator. So we're going to use this same concept that we learned in elementary school to each and every one of these problems on our notes for today. So we have two fractions and we're dividing them. So when we divide, it's the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So put 6c squared d in the numerator and 5ps in the denominator. Now we're simply going to cross reduce and then multiply straight across. So we have 10 divided by 5, which is 2 over 1. 6/3, which is 2 over 1. C squared divided by c squared makes just a 1. Same thing with d divided by d. And p divided by p. And now we have s squared divided by s, making s raised to the first power, or just s. So we have 2 times 2, which is 4. The letters in the numerator is just s to the first, so it's 4s. And in the denominator, all we have is 1. So our answer is 4s. Why don't you guys pause the video and try number 2 on your own, please. For number 2, you should have written it. This right here, class, is another way of writing a fraction divided by a fraction. So hopefully you wrote it like this. It's 3r squared s cubed divided by 5t to the 4th divided by 9r cubed s divided by 20t squared. So it's a fraction divided by a fraction, which means we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So make sure you keep this one the same. Some people want to flip-flop that first fraction too. You don't do that. Keep that one the exact same as it is. So 3r squared s cubed divided by 5t to the 4th multiplied by, now switch this fraction around. So we're going to have 20t squared divided by 9r cubed s. Now let's start killing terms. 3/9 is 1/3. 20/5 is 4 over 1. T squared and t to the 4th make t squared. And r squared divided by r cubed leaves an r to the first in the denominator. And s cubed divided by s makes an s squared in the numerator. Alright, what do we got? We have our our coefficients of 1 times 4, which is 4. And as far as any variables are concerned, we have this s squared. So 4s squared is left in the numerator. And in the denominator, we have coefficients of 1 and 3, which is 3. And then t squared r is in the denominator. And usually this is written in alphabetical order. So we'll write r first, because r comes first in the alphabet, and then t squared comes next. So 4s squared divided by 3rt squared. Let's try number 3. Now we're dealing with some binomials and trinomials. So whenever you see this division sign, the first thing you got to do is you got to change the fraction. So keep the first one as it is. 16p squared minus 8p plus 1. There's our trinomial divided by our monomial, 14p to the 4th. Now we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So this 7p to the 5th, move it upstairs. 7p to the 5th divided by our trinomial, bring it downstairs to the denominator. So 4p squared plus 7p minus 2. Alright, your goal now is to cancel common factors. So these factors we got to get by factoring. That makes sense, doesn't it? Here we have a trinomial. Let's do this to it. Here's a trinomial. Let's do this to it. Here we go. We have 4p multiplied by 4p gets us 16p squared. And a minus 1 times a minus 1 still gets us our positive right here. And now we have our negative 4p minus 4p makes our negative 8p. So we're good to go there. Let's now factor our other trinomial. The way I do this one, class, if you kind of notice, we have a 4p minus 1 here. It's very likely that one of these 4p's minus 1s are going to cancel with something in the denominator. So when I see this 4p squared right here, instead of trying 2p times 2p, I'm just going to try 4p times 1p. Because then it's very likely that we'll be able to get one to reduce with one of these two up there. Okay, so 4p times 1p is our 4p squared. We have a positive 2 right here and a minus 1. Now we have 8p minus 1p gives us 7p. So we're good to go there. Alright, we're all done factoring. Now, let's start reducing. Here we go. Brrrap, brrrap. That was good stuff, right? Here we have a 7 and a 14, which makes a 1/2. And p to the 5th divided by p to the 4th is p raised to the 1st. So what do we got in the numerator? We got a p to the 1st, and we have this factor of 4p minus 1. What do we got in the denominator? We have a 2, and we have a p plus 2. P times the quantity 4p minus 1 divided by 2 times the quantity p plus 2. You guys pause the video. Try number 4 on your own, please. Here's our answer for problem number 3. You guys try problem number 4. After you've unpaused the video, after you've worked this one out and then unpause the video, you got 2 times the quantity d plus 3, I'm sure. You took out a GCF. In the denominator, you got a d plus 2 times a d minus 1. You multiplied, bringing the d plus 3 to the denominator. And then you got this to be d and d plus 2 plus 1. So that goes in the numerator. D plus 2 times d plus 1. So hopefully you got all that when you factored it and when you multiplied by the reciprocal. Now we're going to reduce common factors. Let's see here. D plus 2, gone. D plus 3, gone. So we have 2 times d plus 1 in our numerator and d minus 1 in our denominator. There's hopefully what you should have gotten for problem number 4. Problem number 5 is a lot of fun. You're going to smile when you do this one, I guarantee it. Here we have k minus 3 divided by k plus 1. Let's multiply it by the reciprocal. What I'm going to do here, class, I always like my variables positive if I can. Right now it's a negative k squared. So let's take out a negative 1. And now we're going to make it a positive k squared. So I factored out a negative 1. And now instead of a positive 1 right here, after you take out a negative 1, it changes the sign. So if you take out a negative 1, it's now a positive k squared and a negative 1. That's what happens when you take out a GCF of a negative 1. So now if you guys can see, this is the difference of two squares. So I'm going to factor negative 1 times the difference of two squares, k minus 1 times k plus 1. And there we have it, and this, class, goes in my numerator. Because remember how this is in the denominator, but when I multiply by the reciprocal, it goes up to the numerator. So right here, I have my numerator. And in the denominator, I have a trinomial. Let's factor this trinomial, k minus 3 times k minus 1. And now that's going to go in the denominator. K minus 3 times k minus 1. Alright, let's start reducing common factors. K minus 3, k minus 3, k minus 1, k minus 1, k plus 1, k plus 1. Oh, that was great, wasn't it? Oh, that was fun. So all we have left is this negative 1. Oh, man. That's a fun problem right there. All that canceling, and all that's left is your answer of a -1. I love it. Pause the video, please. Try number 6 on your own. Okay, here we have 2m minus 1 divided by, here's a trinomial. Let's factor this into m minus 5 times m plus 2. So that goes right here, m minus 5 times m plus 2. And then we're going to multiply it by the reciprocal. So now this goes in the numerator. You're going to factor out a GCF. So it's 4 times the quantity, m plus 2. And this is in the denominator. And this is the difference of 2 squares. So you're going to factor this one down like this. This is 2m times 2m. And this is a -1 times a +1. Okay, now you're ready to reduce if possible. So you have a factor of a 2m minus 1 and a factor of a 2m minus 1. You have a factor of an m plus 2 and you have a factor of an m plus 2. That's all the reducing that I see. So in the numerator, you're left with a 4. In the denominator, you have 2 factors that are both binomials. One is m minus 5 and the other is 2m plus 1. 4 divided by m minus 5 times the quantity 2m plus 1. There's your video lesson for today. Dividing rational expressions is the same thing as multiplying, but you must make sure that you multiply by the reciprocal. And you always switch the second one, never ever switch the first. Let me know if you have any questions on that when you get to class tomorrow.